All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in on our Facebook Live. I would like to hand over to Amita Menon. Please, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody, and namaskar to my audiences and to our wonderful, esteemed panel. Good evening and welcome to our audience. I'd like to start off by invoking the blessings of our great masters and gurus. And namaskar once again to our audience and to my esteemed panel. My name is Amita Menon, and I'm your co-host for this evening. I'm also the co-founder of Chiranjeev Gurukul. Let me start by introducing to you Sarika Mahashabde, who's the MD of APT Pneumatics, Hiren Kulkarni, CEO of Infinix Healthcare, and Praful Chandavarkar, MD and founder of Chiranjeev Restaurants and Food Private Limited, and also the founder of Chiranjeev Gurukul. Joining me as co-host for this evening is Rajesh Kamath, founder of Chanakya Consulting Insights, co-founder of More Than HR Global Forum, and co-founder of Chiranjeev Gurukul. I want to start first of all by thanking my team, Tejal, Karuna, and Darren for all their support for setting up the session for us. And before we get into the session, I would request the audience to feel free to post their questions, and we shall be taking the questions at the end of the session. Let me request Rajesh Kamath to start by setting context to today's chat. Over to you, Rajesh.
Namaste. Thank you, Amita. First of all, salutations to our gurus who made this possible to talk about Indian wisdom on chat today. Also, namaste to all our participants who have joined in from various parts of the country and parts of the globe. Thanks for taking out the time on a Sunday evening or Sunday morning, depending on where you are, to listen to this leadership chat today. And finally, welcome to all our panelists. Folks, we have an exciting evening ahead. I'm going to set the context for our conversation today. This is no ordinary leadership chat. It's unique because it's very common to hear people speak about leadership in a very modern context. However, it is rare to listen to leaders who have used Indian wisdom in their organizations. Indian wisdom? Yes. Perhaps now many of you associate me with Indian wisdom. We will clarify a little later what this Indian wisdom means. When I began about 7 years back, Indian wisdom was probably considered as something that is too spiritual and personal in nature. So for starters, I began working on studying it deeply myself and self-application. A lot of introspection. It helped that I had spent all my time before that in management and leadership development. And so I knew what the milieu was. But it would be a completely different thing to bring in Indian wisdom into this context. So our today's conversation is about, can this really be applied to organizations? Because we always think that, hey, Indian management is good for books, maybe taught a little bit as a subject in college, but application in organizations is a rarity, right? So today we will see, we will explore, and we will learn from 3 fantastic leaders today. Or should I call them Swamis and Swamini? Because that's the term that in Indian wisdom, of course there are other terms, but that's the term that Chanakya used for the leader with certain characteristics and traits. Some of you may have had the opportunity to read the LinkedIn article that was posted on Chiranjeev Gurukul, as well as my own personal LinkedIn, where I wrote about some of the behaviors and beliefs of such leaders. Very happy to report to you that we have 3 of them there here in this chat, and you will see more about it this evening. So let's start with asking them a question. First, let's find out more about what backgrounds do they come from, because they're all diverse and very, very interesting. So my question, or rather request, to all 3 leaders today is to share a bit about the organization that they represent, the industry that this organization falls in, and a little bit about the leadership challenge that you faced when this journey began. Okay, so we will go with Sarika first, then Hiren, and then Praful. Request each of you to share a little bit about this. Yes, Sarika, over to you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Namaste, everyone. First of all, let me start off by congratulating Praful for supporting this beautiful concept. And thank you, Rajesh, for inviting me for a topic which has become very, very close to my heart very recently. So I head APT Pneumatics, which is part of the IEC group of companies. And we are into the business of manufacturing pneumatic fastening tools and pneumatic sanders and grinders. Our parent company, IEC Air Tools, was started by my father-in-law almost 49 years ago. So we are going to be celebrating our golden jubilee next year. And today, my husband Amarnath and I both run the company together. So, like you said, you wanted us to talk about share the challenges. Like I said, it's a 49-year-old company. And over the years, we have been modernizing, automation, a lot of bringing in new machinery, automation, bringing in a lot of implementation of new softwares. And we have been wanting, our goal has been to move into, from an owner-driven company to a systems-driven one. And, basically to get this change, if it has to start from the top. Now we have a great team of key people, and most of them have been with us for almost 20 years, if not more. And I'm always very, very proud of the fact and very, very grateful. But at the same time, they are used to working in a set way and in a set culture. So basically, a change was needed, and the change had to come from within. So that is one big challenge that, we wanted to address. And the second one was that we found that there was a lack of ownership in some departments. And the third challenge, which I think, we are facing right now, is that we need a second line of leadership to be developed. So that's when we realized that we need to, impart leadership training to not only our key team, but also to each and every one of our employees. And let me tell you that we did try, bringing in, modern management, but it didn't work at all. And I was fortunate enough to hear about Chanakya Consulting, and I contacted Rajesh and heard about implementation of Chanakya's Arthashastra, and that's where we are today.
Thank you. Hiren, could you please? Hiren, could you please unmute? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh, for inviting me for this session. Congratulations on Chiranjeev Gurukul to Praful and to you. I think it's a very wonderful concept, and my best wishes for this concept. I represent Infinix Healthcare. We have 5,000 young and bright minds working for us. We are primarily in the healthcare business. We work with customers in the US in healthcare, American hospitals, imaging centers, physician groups, giving them revenue realization solutions through our products and services. With offices in the US, delivery centers in Hyderabad, Mumbai, Chennai, and our rural BPO that we promote for women in Bargur in Tamil Nadu. So very diverse kind of organization. And The challenges, if I were to say, are primarily because we have this 5,000 young and bright minds who work for us. And there is, on the other end of the spectrum, customer expectations in terms of quality, productivity. And we have, our work is real time. Our turnaround times, or TAT, as it is called, is 15 minutes, 30 minutes, even, sometimes challenging to the extent that we have really no time to kind of turn back the work. And therefore, our people have to be what I'm going to call in a constant stage of motivation. And that constant stage of motivation has to be for 10 hours in a day. There is no time for our people to at all, go away from their work or drop their energies, drop their motivation at all. That's one part of the thing. And then the scalability that is required, because we have young managers. We have managers who are between 22 to 30, who are leading large teams and who are responsible to deliver solutions to our customers. So when I looked at what Chanakya Consulting had to offer, and the conversation, Rajesh, you and I had, the ease of understanding by using Indian stories, Indian tools, which resonate so quickly with people, rather than looking at something that the Western culture, the Western values have to offer. I thought it could be easier to practice this and then put it as a solution within the organization. And I must say that has worked very well. As we go forward, I'll bring some examples of the teachings, which are very interesting in terms of what Indian teachings can bring to corporate world. And I must say, I was skeptical at the beginning of the program, but as we moved forward, I think the benefits to the organization have been phenomenal. So Rajesh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Hiren. Praful, could you please?
Namaste, everybody. We own a company which we founded 23 years back called Chiranjeev Restaurants and Foods Private Limited. And we have a brand called Malacca Spice, which basically started the trend of Southeast Asian cuisine in Pune. And this kind of developed over the years into many brands now that we have, like virtual kitchens and cloud kitchens. We also have interests in agro-tourism, where we actually have a very great interest in nurturing soil and making sure that we grow the right kind of vegetables and fruit, which we can then get to the restaurant and serve, because it is very important at Malacca Spice to see that we give the kind of food that is very nutritious and has a tremendous nutrient dense values that we can bring to the table. Apart from hospitality, we are also involved in charity in a foundation called Live Life, Love Life Charity Foundation. And in this, we have, we work with 3 or 4 NGOs in Pune, working with below poverty line cancer patients who literally have to fight for their life and have no money. But we work on it on a day-to-day basis. In the past 6 months, we have raised 85 lakhs to help with the COVID Sassoon Hospital, and we've brought in critical equipment for frontline warriors, and we brought in ventilators and stuff like that. And we've been constantly working in different things. So basically, Chiranjeev Restaurants and Foods Private Limited has a charity foundation, has hospitality interests, has agro-tourism, has franchisees, and works in a varied number of formats like business B2B industrial catering units and private catering units and stuff like that. So one of the things that we always felt was it's a disorganized sector. Hospitality primarily is a disorganized sector in India, and we were right from the beginning not intending to be part of that, and we wanted to be part of the organized sector. And we always wanted to employ a crew which felt that they were part of the family and managed it professionally. So even when we were very little, when we were very small in 97, 98, 99, 2000, turn of the century, we were a team of my wife and I, my late wife Chiru and I, were always interested in employing people who had the wherewithal, the education to work in the hospitality industry, which is a very challenging industry, primarily because you are faced with continuously serving people and keeping people happy. And when people expect to be made happy by you, it is a very challenging aspect. And we have a large number of people who will love doing this on a day-to-day basis without stopping, of making people happy. And we realize that unless we made them happy, the crew happy, the guests wouldn't be happy. So we started finding out different ways, and the challenge was primarily the crew that works within hospitality is not of a background that looks to understand academics or go for courses and understand management in the conventional formats, or at least in the Western thought process formats. And that was the challenge we were faced with. So we turned towards something which we will, which I can describe in later down in this on this chat. But what we wanted to do was percolate each and every bit of information that we could get to make people happy. That by making themselves happy at the very base level, that you make yourself happy so you can make the guest happy. We wanted to kind of get that kind of an education dispensed right down to the bottom, right from our CEO all the way down to the person who was even mopping the floors or cleaning the tables and enjoying it. So the thought was very simple. In hospitality, they always say, smile, smile, smile. I didn't want to say that ever in my life. I just wanted them to automatically smile. So how do you get that happening? So, Atithi Deva Bhava was a beautiful story. Everyone says Atithi Deva Bhava, but does everyone know how to put that into a story format and let it percolate all the way down? Rajesh taught us how to do that. And we started implementing that so naturally that whenever an unexpected guest came in, just walked in, the kind of reception that guests got at Malacca Spice was very simply a smiling one, because the person inside internally had been educated through Indian wisdom. Thank you.
So I'd like to ask a question actually to Hiren and Praful. How do you think this intervention of Indian tools and practices that you just spoke about, I mean, how has it really made a difference? Praful did mention a little bit about it, but I think it'll be nice to get a little more elaborate on this in the sense of how has it really made a difference to your organization and to its people? So I'd like to go with Hiren first, and then maybe Praful can take it up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Amita. So, if I look at what are as I said, the challenges that we face, primarily because we have young minds working for us, we need to have them learn on creation of goals, on the direction to reach that goal, and more importantly, the discipline that is required to be constantly at it to reach that goal. So, some of the examples that Rajesh actually taught all of us through his stories, I'm going to say, basically made people understand with clarity and with simplicity. What does that mean? Because these can be mere words. And I think Praful gave a very nice example, Atithi Deva Bhava. How many people really know the story behind that? We say it so easily. And therefore, the same thing applies to us. We all know what a goal means. We know how to reach that. But, the discipline that is required to reach the goal is very critical. And I'm going to take an example here, which I found very interesting. And frankly, when I learned that, I did not know that an example could exist, so many centuries back, I'm going to say. And I'm going to talk about a concept of Panchang by Chanakya. It's a wonderful concept or a philosophy, I'm going to say. And I was actually amazed at how relevant that concept was to our business. And what does Panchang fundamentally say, right? The Panchang is based on 5 principles, if I were to call them that. The principles of planning, the principle of deployment of resources, the principle of when and where, backup planning, and finally execution. Now, if you think about these principles, they are so relevant and applicable to the business that we are in. I'm just going to take one. You know, when I heard this backup planning in our business, there is a concept called BCP, business continuity process or planning, the way it is used. And probably the most important concept in our business, because we are 24/7 and we cannot afford even for a second, not a minute, and I want to say nanosecond, but I'll say a second, to be off our customer systems because of the work that we do. That BCP is the one question that we get asked every time I present to a prospect. Do you have a BCP in place? And BCP is not infrastructure. Just BCP is not the office, it's also the people. So when Rajesh talked about this backup planning, and within those, all the other 5 philosophies or 5 steps, as I talked about, it was so clear to all of us in the organization and very, very easy to understand that Panchang became a routine with our people, right? And to that extent, as I said, when I first heard that concept, you know, I've used that for, I think, 30 years of my career, this entire thing. But correlating that to Chanakya's Panchang and philosophy made it easier to understand. And I'm sure all my 5,000 resources understand it with great clarity. So that's the intervention that helped us. And couple that with the fact, the inherent aspect of any business, whether it is what Praful said, in terms of bringing discipline to the work that we do. And that is very, very critical aspect of what we learned from Rajesh. Thank you.
I would like to handle the same subject. Thank you, Hiren. That Panchang is a beautiful thought process. In the same way, you know, when we were saddled with this challenge in hospitality of how to kind of percolate the knowledge down all the way, we found it very challenging to kind of teach hospitality crew about Western thought processes then applied to Indian situations. I feel Indian problems need Indian solutions. And I've been saying this for 2 decades, that Indian problems need Indian solutions. And I was trying to find that in the West. And we went to many seminars, most of them, I felt like I was on a very fast Australian pitch and the ball was whizzing past my nose and I didn't understand a word of it mostly. I used to nod very knowledgeably, but when I came out, I couldn't apply it. In one of the seminars, I saw Rajesh and I said, okay, you know, we waved out, and then a couple of days later we connected, and he kind of pitched to me this thought process which we could apply in modern management, and especially with people who are not used to thinking in those kind of conventional management terms. So one of the most powerful thought processes that we put together for almost everybody, once I kind of absorbed it with Rajesh, is that we kind of percolated this thought process of the Dincharya. Now, Dincharya primarily is tasks which you need to handle on a day-to-day basis. I would, you know, even as a kid, I would write down what I had to do every day. As a trader in investment banking in Hong Kong, I would do the same. When I got into hospitality, I would do the same, but it was never handled the way Rajesh taught us, in the sense that the Dincharya primarily handles it along the fundamentals of the Saptang. There are 7 varied departments that one needs to kind of look at and then take it further. And I felt that the Dincharya and the Saptang really kind of, and the Panchang, of course, which you so beautifully put forward, Hiren, is what really took us to the next level of effective and very good style of management. So a Dincharya primarily, what happens is all from down the line, up line, right up to me, we get our tasks on a day-to-day basis through technology. And I know what my Amatyas, that is what my people who are reporting to me are doing. And the same way down the line. So Dincharya, primarily the task for the day, or the Rajcharya, the task for the night, are handled in a very systematic manner at Malacca Spice, or even in Cherish Farm, or even in Gagan New Life, where we do a senior citizen home, or even at the Vineyard, or you know, wherever we are working, or even at Live Life, Love Life Charity Foundation, where we are doing the work, this Dincharya is handled and the Saptang is handled. So I mean, in a very short chat like this, I can't get into the details of the Saptang, but just to touch upon it, it starts with the Swami. It starts with us. So the first step of the Saptang is the Swami itself, the development of the Swami. And unless you develop yourself, you can't go to the next few steps. So we started off by saying that each one of my amatyas and my subordinates were Swamis themselves in their fields, in their verticals, and we allowed them to develop. Whether it was on a personal front or it was on an external front, we allowed them to develop, to read, to exercise, to work on their dinsharyas very carefully. And then once the Swami was developed, then we took the other aspects of it. And now those could be to do with finance, that was in Kosh, or it could be to do with customer base, that could be with Janpad, and so on and so forth. So if I the details will be explained in the masterclass which comes up on the 11th of October. But saying this, I'm saying that the most easy implementation in a hospitality business, in a restaurant business, which is supposed to be disorganized or chaotic or people to people connect, we managed to bring in some sanity and some calm thought processes, which kind of work beautifully all the way down, right up to lower management, where we could kind of work the grassroots level employees, also the crew could function in a very coherent manner and come back with the results which made them very, very happy.
So Praful and Hiren, thanks for sharing. I think we already have questions coming in on Facebook as well as on WhatsApp. I want to use one of these questions, Praful. This is directed to you because this will get even more clarity in when people hear, about Dincharya or the Panchang that Hiren spoke about. Really, I mean, what impact have you seen? So the question comes from Dhananjay, who runs his own business in automobile. There are several varied businesses that he runs. And the question that he asks is, what's the one big difference that you saw before and after the intervention?
Well, the minute the intervention happened, each and every manager became his own Swami, became his own leader. And he could measure, or she could measure, what was being done on a day-to-day basis and then tick it off. It's a very satisfying task. Like, for example, when you wake up, okay, it is very important for us in Malacca Spice to meditate, to exercise, to look after yourself. And it is part of our sutras, our yoga sutras, that you do the 10 commandments, which I will address later on in the chat. But what it actually did for them was to allow them to organize themselves on a piece of paper very carefully for their tasks right in the beginning of the day, and then tick it off as the day went by. They could measure their performance, they could for themselves without really coming back to their uplines. And what they could do is they could actually continue innovating at their tasks, continue working at their tasks, and completing their tasks. The minute those tasks were over, they could actually see how well they had done. And this gave them a lot of joy. So I feel that the Dincharya allowed them to really measure and put their day into a sane thought process, which sometimes in our chaotic times, and especially during COVID, where hospitality has been the worst affected for the last 7 months, we have had no business at all. But we've actually thrived and we've innovated and we've done so many things. And it's because of the Dincharya. Because that we know that we have to do certain activities throughout the day, and we are not stopping doing that at all, even during the crisis. So it allows us to keep that crisis on the side and focus what is really important, whether it is Swami development or whether it is an external development of any kind of activity that we had to do in this crisis during COVID times. So Dhananjay, I hope it can answer you. If you are in a manufacturing unit and you have a lot of workers doing multiple activities, it allows them to put those activities down on paper for themselves, not as a reporting upline, but for themselves to measure how well they're doing and then to rate it continuously. So that dincharya is a beautiful disciplinary, a beautiful discipline which allows you to bring out a method to the madness and then kind of perform in that. And I've seen it happen in crisis more than when it was not, let's say this is wartime. At peacetime or wartime, it actually is most effective in both times. But in wartime, it has been fantastic.
So, Sarika, I'm going to just extend that to you, that question. I know it would be interesting for people to hear, especially Dhananjay, since he's in the same sector as you. Any impact, or what did you do anything differently during these difficult times? Did it help in any way? Could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. So definitely, Rajesh. Rajesh, the first sutra that you had, taken with us was, I still remember that so clearly, highest good of the maximum people for the longest time. It was such a beautiful, way of thinking. And we applied it so naturally during the COVID times. I mean, we didn't even, think about it. So when the lockdown happened, and we really had no clue how long it was going to continue, but we took a decision, first decision that we took, that there was going to be no downsizing whatsoever. We had a certain, resources available, and those were going to be shared by everybody. And everybody was going to be treated the same, whether it was permanent worker, whether it was contract worker, whether it was staff, or whether they were consultants. And the beauty in this was that every one of our employees supported unanimously. So that was like a direct difference, I think, that made, learning about Indian wisdom.
Praful, there's also one question. Do you have any statistics to share? People in business love to see, figures and
proof of work done. Yes, of course. I mean, in the sense that we can show the consistent amount of work that has been done in the last 3 years with each manager's development. I mean, in the sense that how many managers and how many leaders were able to continuously monitor their, for example, just let's take Dincharya, okay? And there is a clear measure. So if you want statistics, we'll have to go through a whole bunch of reports that have come to me, for example, and we can definitely present it, that how the work progressed on a day-to-day basis and how it developed, how the human being developed. For me, what is most important is, if I am to spread prosperity, if I'm for the longest time, then I have to make the effort to see that my subordinate becomes a Swami, a leader who can continue to develop on his own. And if you want to measure that, of course, you can measure it over the last 3 years of Dincharyas, of the kind of work they have done, the amount of meditation they've put in, the amount of fitness they've developed, the amount of discipline they've developed in their life, the amount of financial wisdom they have gained. Everything can be measured. Of course, it can be.
So, Hiren, I want to ask one question before Amita asks her question. Hiren, I do know from our work together that you probably had the maximum amount of application that an organization could ever do in terms of the percolation of this Indian wisdom. Whether it is an intervention with young women leaders, whether it is managers who are reporting to the HODs, or whether it is the learning festival. Is this something that you could share a little bit about, of what gave you this confidence to do so much?
So let me Rajesh first say, as my experience has been over the years of having external interventions, right? One of the tests, if I were to say, or the proof of the pudding that I looked at very closely was, after the sessions are over of the interventions, typically, people cool off. So they kind of, go through those seminars, go through the sessions, and in 24, 48 hours, that's the end of the story. So the feedback form is collected at the end of the session. Everybody gives, 5 on 5, 4 on 5, all happy, and that's the end of the story. And one of the things I was very particular is, and as I consider myself as a trustee of the Tandon Group, the company, the group that owns Infinix, is to make sure that every resource that we spend is spent wisely and spent for the benefit of the customers, the employees, and of course the shareholders. So to answer your question, right, we actually had weekly sessions with our people and asked them to present the benefits of the learning to themselves, which is very important, the learning within their processes to their people, and also how did the customer benefit from all these learnings and these two things that I said. And I'm going to bring up three things that became very important, which I watched. And I'm going to also say to Dhananjay, I think Praful addressed that, which is, yes, we have statistics to show the benefits. The first one, very clearly, in a company such as us, in a business that we are in, I'm always keen to see how much of cross-training can we do, because that can bring tremendous benefits to the organization and also to the people and the growth of those people. So that started happening first within the process, intra and inter both. So that became a very interesting thing. The second thing that I saw is our people started to understand the importance of cost saving. We all talk about it, and sometimes very easily and loosely, I'm going to say. What does it mean and how can that translate into business, right? At the end of the day. So that I monitored very closely. And third, and the most important part, which I think has to be monitored in NPS or a net promoter score that we do, is customer centricity. So if I were to look at this benefit and, to answer your question, Rajesh, I'm going to say cross-training became critical, cost saving, understanding of cost saving, what does it mean, how to practice it, how to make sure we give back to the organization that benefit, and finally, customer centricity. So very clear three things that I saw benefits coming through to Infinix.
Thanks, Hiren. Amita, over to you.
Yeah, I have a question for Sarika. And of course, to Hiren and Praful also, we have a little bit of time. I'd really like to know how this Indian wisdom has touched your life personally. I mean, has it made any, has it helped you to transform from within? So
So,
that'll be really nice to hear.
So I've had quite a surreal experience in Indian wisdom. So about 2 years back, this is before I met Rajesh and got to know about Arthashastra. Much to the surprise of most of the people who know me, I got involved with the Chinmaya mission and I started attending their weekly study classes on Vedant. So when I met Rajesh, which was I think almost 6 months later, and first thing I spoke to him, oh, we need training for our key people. And Rajesh was very emphatic about the fact that no, it's going to be Amarnath and you who first 3 months with both of you, and then only I'm going to start working with the rest of the team. So when he explained what it was about, I was quite fascinated by the similarity, between both the studies. So one was, with touching, application at work, and Vedanta was, basically touching all aspects of life. And in both, this was actually the most challenging part of application at work. So basically, to change, Sutra Chanakya says that the leader has to change if he wants his employees to perform better. He has to understand how to communicate with them and get the best out of them. And from Vedanta, I learned I transform, you transform, and the world transforms. So this really, hit a chord with me, and this has been actually the most challenging, where, every time, it's actually about people management, and I have to look within. If I find that, the fact that I have hired somebody, he obviously has the necessary skill sets. And if he's not performing to the way I'm expecting, there's something, something that I need to change in my communication. And I've started doing that. And I think it's definitely making a difference. At least that's what I feel. So, yes.
Hiren or Praful, would you like to?
If I can come in and continue,
Yeah.
that question, and also kind of, what Rajesh asked.
Yeah, thank you.
The entire thing we kind of looked at in Indian wisdom, and I'm also going to bring in Indian mythology. One of the concepts that we started in Infinix was our program that we called Matrika. And it is a belief that I've held very closely. Sometimes my learning also is in terms of, how can we make our resources, and I hate to use that word, but our people better in terms of not just what they do professionally, but also help this young and bright people that Infinix employs personally. And to that extent, we used Indian mythology to kind of teach to our women managers, because I also believe that, an organization is served well if it has women managers in positions of power, not power, but strength, right? Where they can actually manage the deliveries to customers. And I must say with great pride that Infinix has many women leaders. And when we started this program of Matrika, and with, I think, Rajesh, 8 different virtues of goddesses, if I remember correctly. And that program was such a beautiful program that it took all those virtues that can learn, and more importantly, every story and every virtue actually had a correlation to something that they could apply either in their personal life or in their professional life. So, this benefit, and if you ask me, what is my personal benefit? My personal benefit could be, many, but it gives me great joy because I am a deep believer that, I should leave behind an impression to people such that when I look back, I must say that I've created, 10, 15,000 great people in this country. And that is how I look at it. So this programs such as this, and one that Rajesh came back, I'm sure when I look back, will say I helped some people in terms of their professional and their personal life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Praful, would you like to take
Yeah,
that
so
up?
thank you, Amita. See, for me, everything starts, like it is rightfully said in the Arthashastra, with the Swami. And how it has impacted me is how it will impact everything that is in the external part of me, right? So everything is one and the same. For example, if my thoughts are pure, are non-violent, are full of love, then everything that I do will externalize in the same manner. So a large a part of that had already started happening in 2013, 2014, when we were taking the group of Chiranjeev restaurants into meditation as well. So just for everyone to know that our entire crew uh, meditates from 11 to 11:15 every morning. And usually some people are even welcome to meditate longer than that. But the entire group of people also in the lineup, that is on Friday morning, they also meditate all together. Now, this was happening for a long time. But once the Arthashastra coaching, if you want to call it that, started, we started realizing that unless we develop within, nothing can happen without. Nothing can happen in the external part of it, because it is one and the same. So for me, my personal development became incredibly important. So if I was in 2013 or 2014 or 2015, let's say, following the sutras of Yama and Niyama in the first two parts of Patanjali's Ashtang, where you kind of look at ahimsa and non-greed and non-covetousness and non-stealing and only handling the truth, or cleanliness and so on and so forth, where you kind of look at the yamas and the niyamas, I started focusing more on that for myself, and it started having an impact on the outside. So I truly believe that anyone who's listening now is that first try to improve what is within, and everything subtly or even not so subtly will change on the outside. Like Hiren rightly said, like for example, he wants very much to be remembered for bringing 15,000 brilliant people in, developed people outside this experience. For me, it is the same. But first, I want to be the best I can be. So the development, once I started doing the Arthashastra, was deeper and more intense study of myself, the Swadhyaya, the austerity practices which are in the Niyama. Everything started changing. For example, suddenly a vegan menu came out. I'm a complete hardcore non-vegetarian, but I can start thinking in vegetables now. It just started coming out subtly. So it became an intense need for me to say that I want a vegan menu in Malacca Spice. It took a lot of my friends by surprise. In fact, I'm still a butt of jokes for many people because I'm such a hardcore non-vegetarian, or was. And now I'm subtly changing to more and more vegetarian thinking. If you go to my farm, I continuously promote the nurturing of soil and how organic vegetables can be grown. But this is just an externalization of what is happening within me. And this has come in, like Sarika rightfully said, I mean, she started studying Vedant, and I started studying the same thing within through a lot of Swadhyaya, which is a lot of study of myself. And this has happened thanks to a lot of study with in the Arthashastra. I feel that don't try to intellectually take what you learn in the Arthashastra. This is some of the learnings that I have. If you take it intellectually like an academic course, it tends to remain there. Like, for example, something that Hiren touched upon, that we do courses, then we do a certification, and then we forget about it. What we should try and do is really absorb it. Okay, and that doesn't come intellectually. That doesn't come through our intellect. It does not come through our ego. It comes through absorption. And absorption is important. It cannot be explained. If I try to explain it, it loses its value. So when you study the Arthashastra, or you study yourself, in the niyamas, if you start saying, I want to do Swadhyaya, I want to do tapas, that is in austerity, I want to do, I want to purify my thoughts, I want to do all that, you start absorbing it, not intellectualizing it. It's very easy to take the treatise of the Arthashastra and intellectualize it, because that's what has been happening. Okay, and when you intellectualize it, you can actually go and give a lot of sessions, but when you don't absorb it, okay, it has a danger of just being another program. So that is why we want to combine what I'm actually feeling within, and that is the Yoga Sutras are the development of the Swami within. Okay, and that means you have to absorb, and I'm saying not intellectualize it, absorb yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Okay, then you do the dharana, then you do the dhyana, and then you do the samadhi. It has to be the process of the development of the Swami. So when that gets in, when that touches you deep here, okay, and you actualize yourself and you realize it, everything you touch, whether it is in your business, whether it is in your relationships, whether it is in your children, whether it is in your just gardening, it will completely change. The way, the effect will be completely different. So try to absorb it and not intellectualize it. So I know I got questions like, are there any statistics to it? Of course we can present statistics. These are intellectual ways to do it. But is that important? What is important is you will measure it yourself. You will feel within yourself. When you feel within yourself, the amount of impact you will have, the amount of ripple that you will have across your organizations, across people you meet, across friends you meet, will be so immense that one person is enough for 1 million people. Thank you.
So we have lots and lots of questions from audiences. One of them actually is to clarify something. So I will answer that first, and then I will come to you, Sarika, Hiren, and Praful. Okay, so see, one of the things that our audiences have been hearing is various terms which sound rather alien to modern management. Okay, for example, Praful has used the word Swami. So Manjari asks, what is this Swami? So I'm just going to share it in a nutshell. See, having been in leadership development at the Mahindra Group for about 3.5 years, I can tell you that a large amount of focus over there. And mind you, I was extremely and still continue to be very, very proud of that. A large amount of the focus was on the outside, right? Managing resources, managing people, managing the rest of the organization, managing change, which is a must. But what is the most important management that needs to be done actually is of self, and within that self of one's mind, and within the mind of the emotions that arise all the time. So very briefly put, Swami or Swamini is the one who's able to conquer self through conquest of one's mind, through conquest of one's emotions, so that it is conditioned in such a way. And please don't think that a person needs to go to the Himalayas or the forest to do that. There are a lot of tools which increase self-awareness. So a Swami or a Swamini is a highly conscious and self-aware person, man or woman, who can learn certain concepts in Arthashastra, Yoga, which Praful alluded to extensively. And as a result of that, organization begins to see that the leaders mean what they say. When they ask us to change, they are changing first. Okay, so that's important. So Swami or Swamini is the conversion of the self into something that the rest of the organization can see, and they become role models. Okay, so I hope, Manjari, that answers your question. The second thing I'm going to answer very briefly, though that's not a specific question, is that do we need to understand Sanskrit and a lot of Indian words? No, you don't. Mind you, I didn't know a word of Sanskrit before I started this. Okay, so the reason why we use several of these terms is because some of these terms don't have English equivalents, and some of these tools and practices are also unique, which cannot be replicated in the same spirit unless understood in the way it was originally meant. So that's the reason. Don't even for a moment think that these tools are something that which cannot be applied. Okay, so that brings me to a question. Sarika, I have a question from a manager practicing in an IT setup, who is asking about women leaders, not women leaders, sorry, that was for Hiren. How does Indian wisdom compare to modern management? Is there a lot of similarity, or are they very different? Can one example be stated?
Yeah, of course, in some things they are similar, but in a distinct example, I would say is that we always, for years, when we sat with data, it was always about what are the profits. The goals were always the turnover and the profit. And now that what has Indian wisdom taught us is that highest, like I said, highest good of the maximum people, and that leadership is seva, period. So now we are looking at, you're looking at your turnover and you're looking at the profits, not whether the profits are increasing, but whether you have increased employment and prosperity. So basically, Indian wisdom says that focus on prosperity and the profits will follow. And it's a totally beautiful, different perspective at looking at data. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. So there's a question for Hiren, question for Praful. I'm going to take the question for Hiren first. Hiren, people are asking if there's any one example of a quality which you saw developing from the Matrika intervention. Any one example? Because people got very curious when they looked at, heard you say virtues of goddesses. Any one quality?
Now, actually, very difficult for me to bring up that example quickly on quality, but I'll answer that in a little generic way. The whole Matrika program that we ran, right? To look at a woman leader, and nothing to look at gender bias or gender specific here, right? That entire program concentrated on the ability of a woman to kind of run her life, as it were, and how should one handle different aspects of that life, which is a combination of home, office, children, personal growth, and so on and so forth, which came through in the virtues of the goddesses that were kind of taught there, Rajesh, by you, which was done very well. So if I look at the pre-Matrika and the post-Matrika programs and my conversations with those women leaders, which even today, Rajesh, I do in this lockdown situation, over Zoom, and I do this reach out to our people, are coming across very clearly. And in many ways, those examples I see are put to use by these women leaders with their people. So is there a one example that I can bring? Answers yes, they could be, right? But that's not what I want to say here. What I want to say is the overarching benefit that this brings to the people is what we should look at. And Rajesh, with your permission, I do want to make one comment here very quickly, and this is to Praful and to Sarika, right? The way you have created Praful Swami and Sarika Swamini, I must say, I have a long way to go. The depth of their conversation, the knowledge is phenomenal. So, great, Rajesh, to you, and Praful and Sarika, wonderful learning both of you must have had. So I must say, I just wanted to make sure I say that to both of you. I'm very glad to hear you.
Yes. Thanks, Hiren. So we'll just take one last question. Praful, people are sounding incredulous and they are asking whether you actually are able to apply yam and niyam in your life. Okay, that's on the lighter side. They really wanted to know an example.
Yes. See, the yama and niyama I am applying continuously in my life. Yes. Now, if you say I talk about ahimsa, and then you say, hey, you're eating chicken, right? So you're even serving it. So are you applying ahimsa to its fullest extent? And I would imagine that to take it directly in that sense, no. Because yes, we are serving non-vegetarian food at all our restaurants, and then you say, yama, the first part of yama is ahimsa, which is non-violence. Yes, but if you look at it, is not only the non-violence towards another animal or another species, but it is also non-violence or anger or thinking, which is non-loving towards other creatures or stuff like that. So yes, there is a continuous effort where we are attempting to apply all the principles of yama. For example, there is a principle of non-greed. Okay, and we continuously talk about that at Malacca Spice among the leaders, and especially when we kind of do projects together, or when we are trying to spread the word out. We have applied non-greed almost literally to each and every business transaction of ours, and it has an amazing impact. We come out on the losers end in the conventional form, in the sense that we may not get the money we were supposed to get. But if you kind of look at the holistic way and you say this is not important at all, maybe the relationship is important, or maybe it is more important to look at the entire sutra correctly and go ahead. So maybe I fail on the ahimsa part of it 50%, and I don't fail on the 50%. So the effort is to continuously focus on it and continuously work on it. We are human beings, and the only hope that we have for everyone that is hearing is that don't expect anything to be perfect as a human being, especially when you're doing swadhyaya, especially when you're doing tapas, especially when you're doing austere penances for yourself. Whenever you, suppose if you start meditating, for example, and you have a goal, you want to achieve something, it is wrong. You're not going to achieve anything. So you have to realize what you're doing that for. So you cannot measure it like a rat race, like a corporate rat race, for example. So you need to treat yama and niyama in a more gentle format for yourself, but you have to be focused on it. So for example, ahimsa, for example, is important to me. Okay. And I will reach a point eventually where I will develop something, okay, which might be a business enterprise as well, which will demonstrate ahimsa in a more overt manner. And maybe in the years coming, I will reach that automatically, that way I will have developed myself so well within that every transaction of mine, everything that I do will have the feeling of ahimsa around it. As of now, I'm not reached it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not, not on the path.
Right. So I'm going to first of all apologize to our audiences. We've gone over by a minute, but I have so many questions coming from audiences. I just don't know where to stop. So what I'm going to do is take one last question. I'm taking the permission of the audience to extend our program by just 5 minutes more. I'm going to take one question for Sarika, which is a very interesting one, and then I will summarize and we will close with Amita's last point about what next, which is a very important question. So Manjari has asked a question to Amita, which you may need to address at the end, that is there some way to learn this? Is there a cause? And how does that happen? What is the objective? And a lot more questions, duration and all of that. Maybe you can answer that briefly in a way later. Sarika, the question to you is quite challenging, I must say. The question is, if business has operated for so long, I'm sure when you started applying Chanakya's learning, there must have been some friction in the family. So what kind of effort did it take to bring in a new thought process? Please unmute, Sarika.
Yeah, so very, very tricky question. But I think I already mentioned it that when we met Rajesh, he insisted on, working with my husband and me. And I thought that was going to be a tough one. How on earth was I going to get, my husband Amarnath on board? But he also agreed. And so both of us took training for almost 3 to 6 months from him. So there was no friction in the family. And it's been just a year and a half, so the culture change is still, I already said that is one of the challenges. And what we are we are staying true to our values. That's we are a family run business, and there is everybody who works with us is family, so we are staying true to that. And I think the Indian wisdom is helping us to follow those, to continue with those thought processes. And
right. So I want to summarize, being sensitive to our time. I want to say the first thing which probably may have arisen in many audiences' minds. So I want to say that the impact of Indian wisdom is gradual. You heard Praful also imply that when he was speaking about yoga. So essentially, the three leaders whom you heard tonight, and whom you may also meet, in future master classes and programs, are those who have had faith and continued to be consistent in their belief, looking at initial small changes. So there are no immediate large takeaways that we look for in modern management, right? Those takeaways don't come. It only comes if you are patient. So what Sarika mentioned was just an example. So if Sarika were to ask me that can you change the organization quickly, I know that knowing them that they won't ask such a question, but you know that many leaders want that. But we say that's only possible if we start working with you first. So please invest your time with us. And when I say us, that's another clarification. Please don't think this is about Chanakya Consulting Insights or about Rajesh. This is about the thought process in Indian wisdom, both Yoga and Arthashastra. They are the value. And we are going to make it available to you through a masterclass, which Amita will speak about. I want to summarize just 4 points what we heard today. That challenges will continue to be there, but whenever challenges emerge, through the wisdom that comes through all the disciplines in Indian wisdom, the ability to think clearly, the ability to apply it differently is far more. Number one. Number two, Indian management is not just about spirituality. There are clear-cut tools such as the Panchang that was mentioned by Hiren, such as the Saptang and Dincharya mentioned by Praful. And these make a huge difference. It's possible to learn those tools and apply it no matter how large your organization, no matter how multinational it may be. So don't even for a moment think, as you heard from Hiren, working across shores, Indian shores, it applies equally well. Last but not the least, the person undergoes change, the leader undergoes change. So there is personal change. And that transformation within begins to show outside. And what does it show up as? It shows up as prosperity. And one of the biggest differences between financial profits and prosperity is that prosperity is long lasting, takes time, but lasts far longer. Secondly, financial benefits occur for a select few, even if it's just of the organization. Prosperity takes into account all stakeholders of the organization and not just the obvious ones. Okay, so I'm very, very grateful to you, dear participants, who signed up for this Facebook Live. Also, most of all, even though Amita will say, very, very grateful to the 3 leaders who agreed to share of themselves and the changes that they experience through being willing to change themselves. So over to Amita. We have something very exciting coming up within a fortnight. Over to you, Amita.
So I want to just thank all 3 of you and Rajesh and the entire team for this wonderful evening. It's been really a enlightening evening. And for the audience, I want to announce that we are coming up with something very exciting on the 11th of October. It's a masterclass with Praful Chandavarkar and with Rajesh Kamath. They are both going to be doing this session for us. And it's called The Sciences of Prosperity Applied to Life and Business. So it's going to be a 1.5 hour class. And it's going to happen on the 11th of October at 7 p.m. We have the link for the registration of the course. It's a paid course. And the course goes for, I think, $499. So please do register for it. I think the team will put it up in the chat box immediately. And those of you who want to register for the course, I would also tell you a little bit about the course. So basically, it's going to be a session which is going to cover the aspects of both the 2 great sciences that were spoken about today, the yoga and the Arthashastra bit. So both of them and the relevance to today's world, business and life is going to get covered in the session. It will also have a case study which is going to be about the application of these 2 elements in an organization and how it has, unlocked their value in that organization. So it's going to be a wonderful masterclass, and it would be lovely to have you register for it. So do. I think we have the link shared on the chat box. So do register for it. And I would like to end this evening with a namaste to all of you for joining us this evening. to all my friends, to family, and to all our wonderful team members. And I think we've had a great evening with our wonderful, wonderful guests. Thank you very much, Hiren, Praful, and Sarika. And Rajesh, thanks very much for a very, very interesting and enlightening evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great
Thanks
pleasure.
very much. And also thanks to the team that supported this. Very grateful to our audiences as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. Please do like our page. We are also on Instagram as well as on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So please do visit us and like us over there and do follow us. Thank you. We're signing out for now.